stars are right, and that means it's time for another episode of The Whisperer in Darkness. I'm your host, the Man from Lang. Thank you very much for joining me today. On this episode, we are reviewing the neutral cards and basic weaknesses in the Innsmouth Conspiracy, the 6th deluxe expansion for the Arkham Horror LCG. There are spoilers throughout if you care about that sort of thing. If you enjoy what you hear, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Before I get started, I'd like to thank the patrons of this channel for their tremendous support. The Arkham Horror LCG community is amazing, and these people have gone above and beyond to bring you content like these player card reviews. If you'd like to see your name up on this list, head over to patreon.com, sign up for a tier of your choice, and claim your rewards. That would be awesome. Without further ado, let's get started. The first neutral card and only neutral card in the pack is Tempt Fate. It is a zero-cost event with one wild skill icon, fortune, blessed, and cursed traits. It is fast. You may play it during any free triggered ability window. You add 3 cursed tokens to the chaos bag, then add 3 blessed tokens to the chaos bag, and draw 1 card. Man, this could get zany in multiplayer if you have multiple people play this card before you even take your first turn. You could have with the Innsmouth Conspiracy starting at 20 tokens, you could have a 40 token bag basically at the start of the game.
Yeah, it could be very quick. I mean, that being said, this is a very good card for the decks that are looking to focus on cursed or blessed tokens. In the blessed token decks, it seems like a couple of cursed tokens aren't going to be the end of the world for you, as you'll likely draw them and then maybe draw another blessed token, or you'll fail 1 or 2 skill checks and that'll be fine. And then adding the 3 blessed tokens, if you have a way to leverage those with something like Rite of Sanctification, this card turns into 6 resources in a card, which is pretty astounding in my opinion. Again, this is like an engine card. This isn't a card that you just play for the sake of playing it. But in the decks that want this type of effect, it's going to be very good.
Yeah, I agree. I think outside, there's adding blessed and cursed tokens to the bag outside of those particular decks is not something I'm particularly interested in doing. But if you are playing a blessed deck or a cursed deck, I mean, Sister Mary can play this before she does anything. There's five blessed tokens and 3 cursed tokens in the bag at that point. She plays Rite of Sanctification, seals those 5 blessed tokens, and then basically saves 10 resources over the next X number of turns. I mean, that sort of economy is ridiculous for one card, or just that combo itself.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, she's not the only one who can do that. You've got Tommy, you've got people like Yorick can do it as well. So yeah, this is I think if you want that, I'm kind of annoyed by if you're getting 3 tokens that you don't want, because I think, like we've said, you're probably going in all in on one or the other, and so getting 3 tokens that you don't particularly want could be irritating. I think if you're not say Rite of Sanctification, it doesn't really matter because you want to seal those blessed tokens anyway. You're not particularly interested in drawing them. I think if we see a lot of cards that have blessed or effects that trigger off of drawing a blessed token or a cursed token, this card would be, I'm not totally sold on it in that situation, because you're adding 3 extra tokens to the bag that are going to hurt your chance of drawing the token you want.
Mm-hmm. I do think it's better in the decks that want to leverage curse tokens, because if you're leveraging curse tokens, that means you're doing something to make drawing a curse token beneficial, and then drawing blessed tokens is just kind of icing on the cake. Yeah. But I don't think the inverse is necessarily true.
No, I'd agree with that. I think it's if you want the curse tokens, then the blessed tokens are just gravy. But if you want blessed tokens, the curse tokens are are just clogging up the bag, which is not something that I'd be very happy with. But I mean, again, it's fast. If you're trying to translate the cryptic grimoire, this is your friend. I think this is the card that adds the most curse tokens to the bag, is it not?
Other than a weakness, which we'll talk about later.
Right. Yeah. Deep knowledge only adds 2. So if you can play a couple of deep knowledge in this thing, you can load up the bag with 10 curse tokens fairly quickly, and hopefully that will help you translate the grimoire if you go that route, and once we figure out what the grimoire actually does.
It does also combo with the survivor cards, Token of Faith and Predestined too. So if you wanted to remove or mitigate the effect of the curse tokens, you could do that as well, but those are other hoops that you have to jump through. But what do you think overall?
Yeah, I'm not certain that I would. I mean, if you're playing Tempt Fate in combination with some of the survivor stuff, it just feels like you're adding a lot of cards to your deck just to sort of get bless tokens, which survivors don't really have a way of using them. That, I mean, yeah, I guess you could play this with, like, maybe Tommy would play this as well as some of the bless tech and then play some of the survivor mitigation. But again, that really depends on how much you fear those curse tokens, and I'm not sure that fear is warranted. I think this is probably I'd give it a +1 in those blessed cursed, maybe even an Elder Sign in blessed and cursed decks. But outside of that, I mean, it's not useful at all.
Yeah, I would agree with that assessment. Yeah, if you're translating the grimoire, or if you're looking to seal the blessed tokens with Rite of Sanctification, this card is very useful. As not only does it add the tokens, but it cycles and replaces itself. But apart from that, it's not a card you're just gonna put in your deck and be happy with it.
Yeah, it's not. It will not be on my list of events that I will be adding to a deck unless I have some way of using those tokens, and hopefully we'll see more cards down the road that will leverage them. We are moving on to the weaknesses. We have the first weakness is Accursed Follower. It's a basic weakness. It has 2 fight, 2 health, and 2 evade. Humanoid, cultist, and cursed. He spawns at the location farthest from you. It is aloof, and it has the forced effect at the end of the enemy phase. Add 1 curse token to the chaos bag. This guy is a boon rather than a bane if you're going in for curse tokens.
Yeah, when you compare this to something like the Silver Twilight Acolyte, this is a pretty mild enemy weakness.
Yeah, I feel like not just this weakness, but all the weaknesses in this particular deluxe expansion, I feel like the weaknesses have actually been getting easier or milder of late, and this one is I mean, he is, if you're not interested in the curse tokens, this guy is potentially irritating if you were to draw him, say, turn 1 or turn 2, and if the average length of a game is, say, 12 turns, you're going to end up adding a significant number of curse tokens to the bag, which are eventually you're going to add enough of them that you're going to start to draw them. Now, you can play around that to a certain extent, and you are going to fail certain tests regardless of whether you drew a curse token or not, and there is the potential to draw multiple curse tokens on one test, so that itself will mitigate this weakness's impact. I know playing Sister Mary, I drew 4 bless tokens in one during one skill test, so that is also a potential with the curse token. So it's like, okay, I really failed this skill test, but I did remove 4 curse tokens from the bag. So as far as enemies go, I mean, this guy he's pretty weak. He's only got 2 health, so he's most weapons will take him down. Even if you had to take, if you didn't want to waste charges on this guy, 2 actions to kill him. He's only got 2 fights, so most, unless you're a particularly weak seeker, this guy is pretty easy to take down. I don't think the evade is all that relevant, because you'd have to engage him first, unless you're playing something like you want to evade him so you can shoot him with the 25 automatic or something like that.
Yeah, and he's aloof, so you do have to spend an action to engage him if you do want to fight and shoot him. But yeah, I think overall this is pretty mild. And like you said, it could be a boon depending on the type of deck that you're playing.
Yeah, if you were playing, I mean, if I was drew this in a Guardian, then if I was really intent on taking this guy down, taunt and get over here and stuff like that is very handy. Is like in some campaigns like the Path to Carcosa, you're going to be playing those cards anyway to deal with the men and the Pallid Mask. So having to deal with this guy too is wouldn't be overly difficult. I guess in the end, it just depends when you draw him. I mean, if you draw him early, he's potentially quite irritating, because you'll have to first go find him, and then you've got to engage him, which is going to take action. So you're going to waste actions going to him. You're going to waste an action engaging him. You've got to waste an action or 2 killing him. If you draw him late, well, who cares? I mean, he can sit wherever he is and add curse tokens to the bag, and I'll just finish the game before they become a factor.
Yeah, that's how I feel about it too. Pretty mild weakness overall.
All right. I don't think we're going to rate the weaknesses, because they're all bad. It's just they're all auto fails. It's just a matter of how bad of an auto fail they are. The second weakness is Dread Curse. It is a basic weakness. Curse Revelation. Add 5 curse tokens to the Chaos bag. So I did some math on this one. The odds of drawing a curse token, say if you're playing a regular 15 token bag, and you add 5 curse tokens, your odds of seeing one of those tokens is about 25%. If you're playing the Innsmouth bag and you add 5 to the 20 tokens, your odds are about 20%. Your odds of drawing multiple tokens are, say if you have that 15 token bag and you add 5 curse tokens, the odds of drawing the first one are 25%, the second drops to 20, and then the third drops to 16. So it spirals downward pretty quickly. Again, here's another weakness that can be a boon if you are trying to translate that grimoire.
Yeah, I think even more so in this case than the Accursed Follower, this can just be a huge blank, or it can be a huge boon depending on what you're doing with your deck. So again, this is a very mild weakness in my opinion.
Yeah, if you draw it, say turn 1, okay, you've got 5 curse tokens that you're going to have to deal with during the game, but you can play around that. If you're there are going to be those tests that you will definitely want to pass, and so you just need to account for that and commit a few more cards and or resources to that skill test, just to make sure that you can account for the curse tokens. And then of course potentially you could draw multiple curse tokens on one test and eliminate the threat very quickly. So yeah, I wouldn't be overly concerned if I drew this as my basic weakness.
You could also play Tides of Fate too, and you could just replace all of the curse tokens with bless tokens for a turn that you really need to pass your tests. So yeah, pretty mild weakness.
Yeah, I mean, this expansion does give survivors in particular ways to mitigate these curse tokens if you're really fearful of them. I'm not too sure that I would be, but you do have options. If you happen to draw this, you can change your deck around a little bit and then find ways to to turn those. You can turn those tokens to your advantage, which is, I mean, it's very rare these days that you have a weakness that you can actually benefit from in some way, and this is actually one of them, because there are ways to swap those tokens for good tokens and or leverage them to do effects. And we've seen what are those in, was it Devil Reef, they have the new permanents,
The Covenant cards.
The Covenants, that's what I'm thinking of. Yeah, and so if you're really concerned, you can pick up some of those Covenants if you draw this, and that will, I mean, I think one of them turns curse tokens into +1. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's the Seeker one.
The Seeker one. Yeah, so suddenly you've got 5 +1s in your deck. That's pretty good. So yeah, not the worst weakness in the world by any stretch of the imagination. Again, like most weaknesses that we've seen tend to take actions to burn. You've got like Psychosis and Internal Injury and all those ones, Chronophobia, that take 2 actions to burn, which I think I would be much happier to draw this than those, because at least I know I don't have to take any actions to deal with it. But it is not, Dread Curse is not the weakest weakness, if there is such a thing in the bag. That honor goes to Day of Reckoning. It is a basic weakness, End Times trait, Revelation, attach Day of Reckoning to the current agenda, then search the Chaos bag for an Elder Sign token and seal it on Day of Reckoning. Now, I believe they say this card design was inspired by the events of Arkham Knights 2018. I believe they're referring to the Guardians of the Abyss event that they held at that night. I played a Lola deck in that particular event, and she did not do very well. So I am partially responsible for this weakness. But I share that responsibility with everyone who was there that weekend, so I don't feel totally bad about it. But I guess we did good, and we did well enough in this event, because man, this is cake.
Yeah, I think overall this is a pretty mild weakness. I was trying to like compare this to the treachery card that's in, was that Dunwich Legacy? It kind of does a similar thing where it treats all damage and horror taken as direct damage and horror for an agenda or an act, and this is
the Hand of Afargomon.
Yes, yep, thank you. And this is a more mild version of that. Some investigators don't have great Elder Sign abilities, so this is even easier for those investigators to deal with. Yeah, I'd be pretty happy if I drew this as my weakness, especially when you compare it to something like Overzealous.
Yeah, exactly. Like Overzealous to me is an awful weakness, and I would much rather have that. It's like, oh, I lose the Elder Sign token for, I mean, depending on the doom threshold of the agenda, and when you draw this thing, I mean, this thing could be arrive and disappear within a turn. In certain scenarios, like I'm thinking Essex County Express, that has the agenda deck rapidly turns over. This thing isn't going to be around very long. Like you said, a lot of investigators don't have very powerful Elder Sign abilities, and I sort of consider Elder Sign abilities just bonuses anyway. It's great if they happen, but it's not like anybody is really building their deck around the Elder Sign. Maybe Mateo, but
and even then, like, it's only temporary, so
yeah, it's not like we have an investigator yet who's just like, I need to trigger my Elder Sign ability as often as possible or I'm doomed. I mean, I'm happy if I get it once a turn, like once a game or once or twice a game. And some games I never trigger my Elder Sign ability. So I'm like, this thing, if you seal the Elder Sign, you're slightly increasing your chances of drawing auto fails and bad tokens. But yeah, sealing one token, especially in the Innsmouth conspiracy bag where you've got 20 25, 30, 40 tokens in it, sealing the
Mhm.
Elder Sign is almost meaningless.
Yeah, and I can't imagine this scales much more poorly in harder difficulties as well, because again, like the Elder Sign is usually not something you're going to account for. So
Yeah,
yeah, pretty.
I think like
pretty
most, the average Elder Sign ability is like +1, maybe +2. I think Safina's the outlier with +3, but
mhm.
yeah, you're not, if you're playing on a harder difficulty, an Elder Sign isn't necessarily going to save you a lot of the time. So uh, yeah, a very weak basic weakness. So I guess we did well enough in Guardians of the Abyss, because we are rewarded with a bad weakness. That's
Overall, I think the weaknesses are pretty mild, especially in comparison to some of the other weaknesses we've seen in the past. Um, some of these are borderline boons, depending on the deck that you're playing. It's really really not much to say about these weaknesses.
Yeah, I think I mean, Tempt Fate is great if you're looking to pack the bag with tokens, and the weaknesses are mild, potentially irritating, but not. I'd much rather you know save my actions rather than chasing the accursed follower around just because he's going to be adding a couple bad tokens to the bag is just not worth my time. Um, Dread Curse is again a boon if you're going in on that, so I wouldn't be too worried about it. And there are ways to mitigate those tokens now if you're very concerned about them. And then Day of Reckoning, well, it doesn't really do very much. So
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I kind of feel like we should have more to say about these weaknesses, but there really isn't much to say.
So, what are your impressions of the? We've now looked at all of the player cards and weaknesses in the Innsmouth Conspiracy. What's your opinion of the set?
I think overall, this is definitely one of the hardest deluxe boxes to evaluate because so many of the cards interact with bless and curse tokens, and we haven't seen much payoff in this box for those mechanics. Clearly, there's some sort of payoff for the curse tokens, and we've seen a little bit of a payoff for the blessed tokens in Rite of Sanctification. But apart from that, a lot of these cards are just cards we've already seen with add blessed tokens or add curse tokens to the bag. Um, there are definitely some winners, I think, like uh, rogues, seekers, mystics, all fare pretty well, but I think Guardian and Survivor are the most difficult to evaluate just because they're the ones that are so focused on bless and curse tokens.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think the this has been a very difficult deluxe expansion to review because there are so many unknowns about how the bless and curse mechanics are actually going to affect deck building. Um, I mean, it is an option to completely ignore it and not play any of these cards, in which case this expansion doesn't have very much to offer. If you're not interested in using the mechanic, you're not going to see a lot of benefit. It's interesting to compare this to, say, the Forgotten Age, which introduced the seal mechanic, which there were sort of very few cards that used it, and I was expecting during the subsequent cycle of Mythos packs that there would be seal cards coming out the wazoo. There'd be like everybody would be sealing tokens and it would be chaos, and that just didn't happen. There wasn't that weight of the seal mechanic. They didn't seem to really leverage it as much as I thought they were going to. Now they seem to have really gone all in on blessed and cursed in this particular deluxe box, far more than they ever did with sealed. So I expect we're going to see a lot more cards that deal with them in the subsequent cycle, which I think is good, and it will only be once we see what the payoff is for using these blessed and cursed tokens, what that will be, that we'll really be able to evaluate how this box performs. Because I think just like as we've said, just drawing the tokens is not particularly interesting.
Yeah. I mean, and on the flip side, like the way that they attempted to balance some of the cards around the curse tokens has me kind of worried, because when you look at Faustian Bargain, Deep Knowledge, and Promise of Power, these cards are very pushed in terms of power level, and the negative or the opportunity cost is very low for playing them. So I'm curious to see how this will affect the design of the cards moving forward as well.
Yeah, I think they could be there could be some danger there if they think the cursed mechanic is going to be enough to rein in some of the push designs. I'm not sure that it will be, and I think that clever players will find ways to mitigate that cursed downside to the point where you're just simply getting all upside and no downside, and those cards will have to be may end up on the taboo list just because I think the cursed mechanic has to be strong to rein in those cards. If you're going to do it that way, you really need to make sure that the those cursed tokens are a pain, and so far, if you judging by cards like Faustian Bargain and Promise of Power, they are not. And I think clever players will find ways to even mitigate it even more, and we could end up with a bunch of cards that deal with curse tokens that are just too good for their own good.
Yeah, like we've seen the Blasphemous Covenant, which allows the curse tokens to be turned into +1s. So I mean, like creating my issue with this mechanic is that it doesn't interact with other mechanics already in the game, and for the players that may not want to play Innsmouth, like there's very little to offer apart from this mechanic too. Like there is Cryptographic Cipher and the 25 automatic and the Sword Cane, which I think are useful cards outside of the Curse and Bless thing. But apart from that, like I think it's very, very focused on that mechanic to its detriment and to its benefit.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think they're taking a pretty big risk here, actually, with this mechanic. I mean, at least with the sealed mechanic, you could take it or leave it, and there were enough cards in the deluxe expansion and the subsequent Mythos packs to make it worth picking them up. But if the Bless and Curse mechanic isn't a success, we're going to end up with a whole lot of cards that are going to be aren't going to be that good, which is going to be a cycle's worth of cards that don't live up to people's expectations. Would be tough for the game, I think.
Mm-hmm. Or the opposite, like we were saying with Faustian Bargain and Deep Knowledge, you could have the totally opposite effect where you try to use the curse mechanic to rein in the power level of some cards, and it just completely backfires.
Yeah, and then you end up with a whole slew of cards ending up on the taboo list or whatnot, and I mean, so far they've kept the taboo list fairly minimal, and I don't think it would be great to suddenly see a whole bunch of cards land on it from one particular set. And I guess we've seen quite a bit of debate, even just in the comments on my channel, about people who, I mean, there are people who hate this mechanic. Some people like this mechanic, but I think it's going to be one of those. it's going to have its lovers and haters, and it just hopefully it's going to be balanced. I have faith that designer Matt Newman and Jeremy Zorin will pull this off, but it is you see cards like Faustian Bargain and Promise of Power, and you're kind of like, it makes me nervous.
Yep. Yeah, that's where I'm at. I am optimistic but nervous.
Yeah. Well, that's going to do it for our look at the Innsmouth Conspiracy expansion. We will be back with a look at In Too Deep when it arrives in probably early November, I expect. And we will go from there. Thanks very much for joining us. That's going to do it for this episode. If you enjoy what you hear, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. If you need to contact me, I can be reached at manfromlang@gmail.com. I am also on Twitter at manfromlang. Until the stars are right, keep your shotgun close and your elder sign closer. Take care out there, and happy investigating.